Hello, Browns fans. Welcome to the Dawgland podcast. I am Anthony Joki. He's Jackson McCurry. We're here to talk about the Browns' 21-17 loss against the Minnesota Vikings in London yesterday. Unfortunately, a very tough game. We had control for what seemed like most of it, and the Vikings scored a late go-ahead touchdown to take the lead, 21-17 at the end of the game, and we just couldn't, get down the field with the minimal time that the Browns had remaining to potentially get a game-winning touchdown. But the Browns do fall to 1-4 yesterday, and it was the debut of Gillum Gabriel as the starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. We apologize we didn't get a chance to talk to you guys last week. Schedules unfortunately didn't align, and we were stuck, being busy and whatnot. So apologize for that. But we are here to talk about this loss. The Browns, Jack, now are 1-4. They made a quarterback change. What are your overall thoughts about the game yesterday first? We'll start there.
Man, it's tough. I mean, you felt like we had control of that game throughout yesterday, and then, lo and behold, as it got down towards to the end, like the offense could not get the ball moving. The defense, God bless them again. They did a lot, but weren't able to finish the job. That last drive, they just got picked apart by Carson Wentz and that Vikings offense, and despite their flaws on that side of the ball. It was a game I thought the defense could dominate, keep it close, the offense do just enough, and everything went that way. And then lo and behold, that final drive, we just fell apart, and unfortunately, we had to take a loss.
Yeah, it was that last drive was very tough, and maybe we could start there because that seems to be the biggest discussion point over the last 24 hours or so after the game ended. So obviously we're 1-4, and there's been a lot of blame and whatnot going around. And who should we blame for this? Who should we blame for that? For the Browns 1-4 start, and everybody seems to have. Well, I won't say everybody, but after yesterday, the blame is really starting to go towards Stefanski. And so far this season, we have not scored 20 points. As a matter of fact, the Browns are in the middle of a 10-game stretch where they have not scored 20 points or more. So when we hired Stefanski, offensive coordinator, we thought, our offense would be good. We've had stretches where it's been pretty good. And, our defense gave up 21 points yesterday. In today's NFL, like, that's pretty good. You're expected to score at least 20 points in order to win these football games. So our offense obviously struggling. The play calling during that drive, they were only able to get 11 seconds off the clock and only used two of Minnesota's timeouts during that stretch. How do you feel about that drive and the way it played out with only getting 11 seconds off the clock and not able to get a first down to, burn more off the clock and maybe put the game away in that situation?
Man, it was tough. I mean, the beginning of the game, like Quinshon Judkins could get whatever he wanted against that defense. Obviously, he had the big touchdown run that gets nullified by a holding call. But he goes over 100 rushing yards in back-to-back games from scrimmage. Like you got the makings of a superstar there. But like that final drive, like you go one run play, you lose a yard. They burn a timeout. You go again, no gain. So then you're in a third and long situation. You're trying to put the game away. So you're throwing with a rookie quarterback in his first NFL start in what was a pro Vikings crowd. I've seen people say it was like a 3-1 fan deficit between the Vikings fans to the Browns fans. So I'm sure it was loud in Tottenham. You're throwing it to a rookie receiver, Isaiah Bond, who's still probably trying to, find his way in this offense, even though his snaps have increased. He's the number 2 receiver behind Judy right now because of the injuries and everything. And it was just not a good play. It was short. It was not, weren't even going to get the first down. So, I mean, it's just tough to be in that spot. Uh, it, it it's a tough situation, obviously, for everybody involved. Like and you only burn 11 seconds, which is even worse because you're giving the Vikings a chance to at least tie the game. Obviously, they go down and win the game. It it's tough to throw or to be in that situation with a ton of inexperience on the offensive side, but at the same time, like Kevin Stefanski and his staff have been in the league for a long time, so you think they would have put them in a better situation. But I mean, it's hard to, it's hard to, what's the word I'm saying? Trying to find to say like I don't know what we could have done better in that situation, but obviously Minnesota had adjusted well and against our offense, and we didn't adjust well to try to find something else that would have worked to potentially put the game on ice.
Yeah, I mean, in those situations, you're in your four-man offense. You get 1 or 2 first downs on that drive, and the game is over. You burn through their timeouts, you burn through the 2-minute warning, and you're able to run the rest of the clock out with, 1, 2, maybe 3 first downs is what it might have took on that drive. And it's really, unfortunate because there was that drive where they couldn't put anything away, but also the drive at the end of the first half where they had a chance and were driving really well, got down to the red zone. It seemed like Quinshon Judkins disappeared in the red zone. They decided to run with Ford. You end up only getting a field goal in that situation. If they would have got a touchdown on that drive, they're obviously in a much better spot than just a field goal. What were your thoughts on that drive at the end of the first half? Who, like I said, Gabriel had a nice drive, got them down there, but they ended up faltering inside the red zone, which the Vikings defense is really good. We should preface that. Dylan Gabriel's the only quarterback this year to have 2 passing touchdowns against the Viking defense. So there is that aspect of it, but you would feel like that the play calling should have been better at the end of first half as well.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that drive was probably Gabriel's one of his best of the day. I wouldn't say it was his best because obviously he had two scoring drives that looked really good as well. But yeah, like they were moving the ball down the field. They get down to the 9 yard line, first and goal. And then like what was so weird is like Quinshon Judkins went away. And Stefanski said he went with the experience back in that scenario and Jerome Ford. But you run with Ford, he only gets a yard, and then it's an incomplete, a false start by KT Levestive, which you're just backing yourself up, and then it's another ill-timed throw to Njoku into coverage. Surprisingly, didn't get intercepted from what I recall seeing on TV. But yeah, like you get yourself into a good situation, a good rhythm and flow. Like you're clicking with your offense, you're firing to all your receivers. Like you even used Jerome Ford in a couple passing situations. Um, so you feel good about it, but then like you don't have Judkins out there, which I mean Stefanski made his reasonings as to why he wasn't out there, but the way he's been running the ball, like do not understand in that scenario, especially um you did have one timeout left at that point. Like you could have tried to run the ball with him, try to, get closer to the end zone, maybe have a better play call in that situation to throw to potentially Njoku or Fannin, who were like Gabriel's go-to guys yesterday on offense. But yeah, it's a shame. And, it's another example of the Browns like shooting themselves in the foot with that false start penalty. Cause after you already have one incomplete pass and you have a false start, it backs you up, puts you in a situation that you don't want to put your rookie quarterback in. So, like, yeah, it was just bad luck at the end of the first half. We still go into halftime with a lead, but the fact that we could have went in with potentially a touchdown lead instead of a field goal lead, like that could have changed the whole complexity of the game.
Because I'm looking at the drive by drive summary, and they got down to the 9 yard line with 30 seconds left. Took their second time out. From there, 1 yard run, incompletion, 5 yard penalty, incompletion, field goal. So you obviously have a much better opportunity there, and to probably get a touchdown than what they had. But it's a really tough blow. But like I said, the Vikings defense is also very good, so they made their red zone stand in that drive. But you want to come out more, especially with how this offense has been struggling so far this season. Before we move forward as the offense as a whole, I want to talk about the offensive line a little bit. It was nice to have Jack Conklin back yesterday. You could see the effect in the running game, but the left tackle position, they were switching between KT Levison and Cam Robinson, who they acquired from the Houston Texans, which we didn't get a chance to talk about. But they were swapping them back and forth on offense and different series and whatnot. Both of them had crucial penalties. Both of them had at least one false start, at least one holding penalty yesterday. Obviously, it's a tough spot after losing DeJuan Jones, trying to figure out who's going to play left tackle for the season, and that was even a question mark to begin with. How do we feel about the O line yesterday? Do we feel like it improved with what we saw, or is it maybe still going to be a struggle moving forward? Kind of wait and see at this aspect.
The one thing I think, like the biggest thing with the offensive line is you got to get some continuity there. There's been, I think, a different combination every game through the first 5 games. So I think that's a major red flag for starters. I do like that they've gone out and tried to, or they've made moves to try and fix the situation. Bringing in Thayer Munford onto the practice squad a couple weeks ago, or to the active roster. They signed him from a practice squad, and then trading for Cam Robinson, who, granted, was not was inactive in Houston, but has a history of being a starting left tackle in the league. So it's good that Andrew Berry is being aggressive to try to fix the situation. I think once you get it settled and you get Cam Robinson in there as a left tackle, and barring we can stay healthy. I feel like the offensive line will settle, which will only be a good thing for not only the running game, but hopefully for protecting Dylan Gabriel as well. So, like, all in all, I thought they took steps forward. Yes, they got pressured a lot. According to PFF, 5 of the 13 pressures generated yesterday were to KT Leviston, who was a late round draft pick for the Rams. We picked him up late in the preseason. Like, he's a backup tackle at best. And I'm using that loosely just because he has not been good from the times he's been out there. Um, but this offensive line is a major question mark and will continue to be a major question mark. So you hope Robinson gets acclimated, gets into the lineup, and they can solidify the line. But this is going to be a subject that's going to be looming over this franchise for the next couple of years, Anthony, because we know it's getting older. And what they have no really young pieces behind them to develop. So you hope that it can get fixed for this season, but obviously the future of this group is looming.
Yeah, it's a tough spot that this offensive line is in for sure. You hope that things continue to improve, and like you mentioned, maybe get some continuity. And what's really tough is you have the Pittsburgh Steelers defense staring down the barrel at you next week, which is never an easy task to go and face, especially with tackles that are struggling in their pass rush. So definitely something that is going to be a challenge heading into next week with the Steelers for sure. All right, the Browns did make a quarterback change. They went to Dylan Gabriel. Yesterday, he was 19 of 33 for 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Was sacked twice. How do we feel about Dylan Gabriel? Well, first off, the decision to go to Dylan Gabriel over Joe Flacco, and how do we feel about him moving forward for the rest of the time that he's the starter?
I thought he was okay. I the move, first of all, like I wrote about it. It was published literally 20 minutes before um the announcement was made, but I thought the time was right to make the change just because Joe Flacco looked like a shell of himself. Like, he just looks like he is over the hill for sure in terms of being an NFL quarterback. I know a lot of things around him weren't helpful, but Joe does not look right. And I thought, if, you know, despite what some of the media has said, like, jobs are safe, like, you can't think that way. I think if you're a head coach, especially if you're a head coach whose owner has made a lot of coaching changes, organizational changes throughout his time, like, I thought the time was right to make the switch. And Gabriel obviously was the right man to go to just because he has looked more ready when you look at the entire body of work, including the preseason. But overall, like yesterday, I thought he looked okay. I mean, he wasn't great, but you look at it, he didn't turn the ball over. He led three scoring drives, two touchdown drives. I thought, he was able to escape pressure at times, much more than Joe Flacco could do during the season. I thought he made some nice throws. Obviously, like he's not going to be a guy that can throw it deep. So I feel like the offense needs to be worked on to where you can get guys open in the short and intermediate game. I thought he felt really comfortable with Njoku and Fannin, and that was apparent the way he was throwing it to them throughout the game. Hopefully, he continues to build upon it. The fact that he didn't turn the ball over, the fact he only got sacked twice, I think that's good. I think the offense just needs to keep progressing with him. Maybe make it to where they can move the pocket to where I think that's where he's best suited is if he can roll out, the pocket moves with him and then he can fire downfield to the receivers and the tight ends. But I liked what I saw. I'm not going to sit here and say Gabriel's the future and the franchise quarterback because I think there is limitations to his game. But Anthony, I think when you look at him, he showed that he could be a guy that can be in the league for 10 years. He can be a Colt McCoy. He can be an Andy Dalton. He can be somewhat of a bridge quarterback, but at least, at the very least, a solid backup in the league for the next decade, which is good for him because he's going to have a job no matter where he goes. But obviously, we're going to need to see more than one start. I think in the past, we have proclaimed guys after one or two starts. But I feel like it looked good. It looked way better than what Joe Flacco could do with this offense. But you obviously want to see more, and hopefully we will get to see more here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think there's aspects of what you saw yesterday in terms of what you have in Dylan Gabriel. Like when they draft him, they know exactly what they're getting and what he's going to be. And one of the things that I saw yesterday is a lot of times there were balls that he threw where he didn't force it into a spot and tried to put it where only his receiver could get the ball. So he wasn't trying to force something in there that could have been an interception. He was throwing it to a spot where only his receiver could get it and it wouldn't be an interception based on where the receiver was. So like he made very smart decisions with the ball yesterday. That one to the joke you referenced earlier, that I think that one was tipped and could have been a pick that way. He did have a couple balls that were batted down, but I think that's just Vikings D line is pretty good. But I think you saw yesterday him make good decisions in terms of why he could be a decent backup quarterback in this league. If that's what they know that they have in him, and you're right about moving forward. I would like to see them roll out the pocket more. Especially when you have tackle issues. If you're able to help alleviate some of that pressure, and maybe that's something they do this week with Pittsburgh, is roll out the pocket away from Alex Highsmith or T.J. Watt. Trying to get away from those guys so that way he can make good decisions with the football. Uh, the running game is going to continue to help him. If they're able to get the running game going, that's going to open up these zone replays at times when they're, could be gained for good plays, especially when you do have opposing teams with good pass rush and you get those ends coming down the line to try and stop the run. Those zone replays could be very helpful in certain aspects. I think that him being comfortable with the tight ends is obviously a great start. They do need to try to find a way to get Jerry Judy more involved early on. I think that will definitely help him out. It seemed like he was very comfortable with throwing to Isaiah Bond yesterday and targeting him, but they need to get Jerry Judy involved with everything else here in this offense to be able to help Dylan Gabriel out early on in the game.
Yeah, without question. I think like Jerry has severely regressed and you could sense some frustration in post game interviews. I think he's frustrated himself, but I just wonder if there's frustration with, the scheme. Well, we know in the past the scheme has not been ultra friendly to wide receivers. I mean, going back to Stefanski's days in Minnesota, and that was part of the reason Stephon Diggs wanted out of there. And we know some of the frustration with Odell Beckham. It's benefited other receivers. I mean, obviously Amari Cooper, Jerry Judy last year. Look, but we know this offense is more beneficial to running backs and tight ends. Like, so there's got to be some kind of way where you got to benefit the wide receivers, especially, Jerry, who had a great year last year. With Jameis and Deshaun and the other quarterbacks that were here, but like it hasn't been a great start for him. You know, it's kind of reverting back to the Denver days where he wasn't a great pass catcher and there was frustration there. Obviously, it was a quarterback situation similar to the one we're in now, where there just wasn't good quarterback play there. So you got to try to balance that out. I know you got to keep your weapons happy. And they paid Jerry Judy, they traded for him. Like they got to find something to make it work because he's here. Like the Browns aren't getting rid of him. They can't get rid of him because of the contract. So there's got to be some way where this offense can be more beneficial to Jerry, but on the same end, he's got to follow up. He's got to be the guy that if they're going to throw it to him, he's got to catch the ball and be that playmaker that we saw he could be last year.
And I feel like there's small things that they could do to get him involved. Like yesterday, we saw a play where Justin Jefferson was lined out wide. He came back into the backfield and was able to get a linebacker on him in a mismatch coming out of the backfield, caught a pass. I feel like those are small things that they can do to get Judy involved with this offense to keep him, going and maybe just build up that confidence and build up that rapport with him and Dylan Gabriel, as we move forward here. Like just these small little things can add up. And I remember hearing this past offseason Tom Brady kind of talking about your number one receiver and the rapport that you have to build with them early on in the game. He's like, the last thing you want to do is have your number one receiver out there running all these very hard routes, going 110 miles an hour down the field and not get him the football. Like they will get tired and they will get disinterested in those certain aspects. So you want to get them involved early on. And Judy is somebody who has the skill set to be able to do that. They just need to get him involved early on in these games. So that way, one, it builds the rapport with Dylan Gabriel or whoever the starting quarterback is, but also it helps out this offense as to move the football, which is what they have struggled to do early on in the season.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, you look at how the receiving yards are going through 5 games. Like Judy's at 197, Njoku's at 195, Fannon's at 173, and Bond's at 114. So you have 4 guys that can help you open a game. Njoku had a great game yesterday. I thought he was active early, which I think that's probably the key with him, which is it's sad that if you don't get him the ball early, like I've seen it at times where he can loaf. Obviously, like Fannin was involved early as well, scores a touchdown early in the game, but like you got to find a way to get Judy involved early. And I feel like that would open things more up, not just for the other receivers on the team, but the running game. Because if you got Judy, and they did it against Detroit, like Flacco got Judy the ball early, 2 catches for 52 yards, and then it just kind of fell apart later in the game. But like if you can get your number one target the ball early, and this is where it goes to Stefanski and Tommy Rees, like script plays out to where you can get Judy the ball and get him involved early. Granted, he has to catch it, and that's been an issue with the offense as well as the receivers haven't been catching the ball. But if you can get him involved early, I think that'll be beneficial to the rest of the offense as well.
Let's head over to the defense. The defense surrendered 21 points yesterday to the Minnesota Vikings. Ultimately, the game-winning touchdown with under a minute left to go. The Vikings were pulling guys off the street to play offensive line yesterday and really couldn't seem to get much pressure on Carson Wentz. They only sacked him 3 times yesterday. So, how do we feel about this defense where we were expecting them to have a big day yesterday with the struggles that the Vikings had on offensive line? Granted, they do have very skilled position players, with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. They do have guys on that side of the offense, but it was Carson Wentz starting at quarterback behind a very beat up offensive line.
Well, I think credit goes. I mean, we can knock the defense, but credit goes to Kevin O'Connell in the offense. Like we knew we all knew and we were kind of like excited about the fact that 3 offensive linemen were out. They were on their third string center, so we thought the defense was going to have a field day, and they had their moments. Obviously, we won't take anything away from the Browns defense as well, but Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings offense had a great game plan. They got the ball out quick. Carson Wentz's time to throw yesterday was 2.5 seconds. And I feel like that was key. They were getting the ball out quickly. It helps that you have great skill players, like you said, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, once he got involved in the game, Jordan Mason at running back, Cam Akers at running back. Like, once, Wentz got the ball out quick, and it helps when you have the best wide receiver in the league and Justin Jefferson, like that helps make things easier as well. And, they got the ball out quick. They were targeting our secondary, which we had, like we mentioned earlier in the year, Anthony, we had concerns about the defense and they struggled at times. Denzel Ward didn't have his best game yesterday. Greg Newsome didn't have the greatest game. Swessinger in coverage didn't have a great game yesterday either. So they attacked our defense with quick throws. And obviously the one wildcat pass by Akers for a touchdown, like it's hard to defend those type of plays because when it's a trick play in a wildcat formation, like I don't think that's anything you can really game plan for and be prepared for. Those things just happen. But you know, as much as the defense, there was some holes there yesterday. Credit goes to the Vikings offense as well because they game planned it pretty well despite their deficiencies to attack our defense, which has been great all year. But there was a couple bumps in the road yesterday for sure.
And again, as I said earlier, like 21 points, that's pretty good in terms of the
Yeah,
NFL week to week. If you give up 21 points and you only give up 21 points, you're going to win those maybe 2/3 of the time. Unless your offense is really barren, which it seems like the Browns' offense has been. But the parts where they were killing us yesterday, and I kind of referenced it earlier with the Justin Jefferson play, is they were killing us on this motion all day. They were using it to create mismatches, whether it was for Jefferson, whether it was for Addison, uh, Jalen Naylor as well. Like they were killing us with this motion, and I feel like that's something our offense should be doing because we have skill position guys that can do that to create these mismatches. But Kevin O'Connell and that Vikings offense really utilized what they had yesterday to attack an aggressive defense, which we all know Jim Schwartz's defense is very aggressive all the time. And, kudos to them for what they were able to do yesterday. But, they utilized so many different aspects to attack our defense yesterday and, ended up burning us in costly situations.
yeah. I mean, it the whole thing with motion, and I know our friend and colleague Jake Burns has been harping on this for years. Like our offense, there's no like there's no motion, there's no like they don't do anything like off the cuff. It's just our offense is what you see, what you get. That's the way it's been, and that's obviously one of the big critical things about Kevin Stefanski. He really doesn't adjust to a defense or tries like anything different. It's just what you see is what you get. Kevin O'Connell coming from Sean McVay's tree, and we know what Sean McVay's been able to do to revitalize offenses since he's become the head coach of the Rams, and even showed that at times in Washington. But like these guys evolve. Unfortunately, our coaches don't evolve. Like we've tried different things, but we Stefanski has stuck to that run heavy play action stuff, and it works at times. Like we're not going to try to deny that it hasn't worked, but Kevin O'Connell is one of these innovative coaches that has done different things, tried different things, plucked it from the college game, from other pro teams, and that's what makes it work. It also helps when you have, like you said, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, who was great coming out of Pitt and USC. But when you can pull it out, pull tricks out of the bag with a Jalen Naylor, like you said, Cam Akers throwing it to a Josh Oliver, who's a backup, he's backup tight end of Minnesota. Like when you're pulling stuff out of the bag with backups and third string guys at your skill positions, it's just a bad day at the office. But it wasn't overall bad. Like you said, at the end of the day, you only give up 21 points. That's not bad considering how explosive the Vikings offense can be. But just certain points in the game yesterday, it was just not the best day for Jim Schwartz in that aspect.
Yeah, it's tough. And you heard Denzel talk about the game winning touchdown that he gave up to. Well, I would say it was him solely, but he took credit for stating the fact like he should have been able to push Addison more towards the boundary and the sideline for the safety help behind him to get over there. He owned that. He said he could have done a better job with that, and it's a tough situation to be in. At that point, you hoping you're not giving up that touchdown to Justin Jefferson, but they ended up giving up to Addison on the other side there. That whole drive, like they were using their timeouts, able to slow things down a little bit. Obviously, trying to play for hopefully Minnesota was only going to kick a field goal in that situation. That's what they were playing for. Maybe get some time back on the clock. Um, once they got past midfield, they had that big chunk play that got to around the Browns 40 or so, if I remember correctly. At that point, all right, start playing for a field goal defensively. Try not to let anything burn you. Unfortunately, they did. You know, it's a tough situation. To be in towards the end of the game there. Um, I do want to talk a little positively about the defense a little bit. Malik Collins had a game yesterday. It seems like, you know, this is going to go down as one of the better free agent signings of the offseason. And he's somebody that has gotten in there on this defensive line, next to Myles Garrett and crew, next to Mason Graham, the rookie, and has really excelled so far this season. You know, they brought him in here with hopes of shoring up this defensive line, and I think he's over delivered at this point.
Yeah, like when we moved on from Dalvin Tomlinson, I was bummed just because I thought like, hey, he's been a good, solid defensive tackle for us. But when we signed Malik Collins, I was amazed that we were able to get him because of his effectiveness, because of his history around the league. You would have thought he would have latched onto a contender or something, but he signed with Cleveland. And he's been as good as advertised. It also blew my mind. Like during training camp, like no one was really talking about him. Like some of the podcasts were, but like nobody was talking about him. Like this dude's gonna sneak under the radar and really surprise some people. And he's been effective. He's been dominant, much like yesterday. I thought he had a really great game with 2 sacks, generating pressure, getting after Carson Wentz. Alex Wright, I think that's his second straight game where he's really come out and had a solid performance. Oh no, he didn't. Not against Detroit, but against Green Bay, he was effective as well. It's good to see him back post the pectoral injury. But like this defensive line, for all the knocks about like where was Miles yesterday, like he was out there, but that Minnesota was probably honing in on trying to keep him away from Carson Wentz, but you can't really do that in this Browns defense because you have other guys that are going to get after the quarterback. And seeing Malik Collins, seeing Alex Wright do that yesterday, I thought that was really great to see because that just shows like you can focus on 95 all you want, but we got all these other guys on that defensive line that can make an impact and get after the quarterback as much as Miles can.
Yeah, they were doing everything they could to neutralize Miles yesterday, which teams can at certain points do a very good job of. There were times where he was getting close to Carson once. He did bring him down from behind, but it was for like a 2 yard gain. You could tell there were times where he was going to get there, and the thing with the Vikings offense is it was a lot of quick reads yesterday. You mentioned his time to throw, but the times that the Browns defense were able to get him to his second, third, fourth reads, those were the times that they were able to garner some pressure on him and, force an incompletion, force a get a sack and whatnot. So, you know, like I said, it's a tough thing because they have a very good coaching staff over there, and Kevin O'Connell. Like they do very good things offensively. They have a good defense. Their game plan was exactly what it needed to be, especially after they struggled in all those aspects against Pittsburgh the week earlier, and the pass rush that they have. So they took that, build upon it, and put it to good use yesterday against the aggressive Browns defense, and ultimately, you know, held us to 17 points, scored 21, and the Browns are now sitting at 1-4. So their coaching staff did a good job. Ours, definitely could have had some improvements offensively. I think defensively, like I said, 21 points, you really can't fault a defense for doing that, except maybe the final drive. So um, tough situation to be in. But now Browns are sitting at 1-4, heading to Pittsburgh next week, and I think one of the more frustrating things about this season, Jack, is you look at Pittsburgh is sitting at 3-1. After yesterday, Baltimore's 1-4. The Bengals are 2-3. You can make a good argument that the Browns should be 3-2 right now. They missed the field goal game one, missed the extra point. They should have won that game probably yesterday. And if they do that, they're also sitting at 3-2, heading into 3-1 Pittsburgh with the division, you know, first place on the line in Pittsburgh this Sunday. But instead, they're going into 3-1 Pittsburgh being 1-4. Now you win, you're only a game behind the Steelers. Well, a game and a half because they've only played four. But you go into Pittsburgh, you win next week. This whole thing is still not out of the realm of possibility.
No, it's not. But it's you look at where we're at and what we could be. It's like bad coaching decisions, uh, turnovers, obviously a big thing. Penalties, another big thing. Like it's all building up. And if you listen to us, we listen to Cleveland media. A lot of things are going against Kevin Stefanski right now. Like if he can somehow go to Pittsburgh and do what hasn't been done in a long time, that'll push some stuff aside. And he needs it. Like he needs it, the fan base needs it, the organization needs it. And like obviously, like it's not all on Kevin. And I'm gonna continue to say that. I know a lot of people are ready to like put that man on the shelf and go find the next head coach. And I will listen to that. And if it keeps going the way it's going, like we know what's coming, Anthony. But it's like it's not all him. And you can blame it's an organizational thing, and I will continue to say that as well. It Everybody can be put to blame for what is going on with this team right now, and the fact that we're what 4 and I think it was 4-20 in the since the beginning of last season, and we haven't scored a lot of points, and you can point the finger at a million different people. Kevin Stefanski deserves criticism, I'll say that, but like it does suck to be in this spot because we could be 3-2 going into Pittsburgh with a shot at first place in the division and silencing a lot of critics. But the fact is, our record is what it is. We're 1-4. Hopefully, things can turn around and get it turned around, Anthony, because we know the smoke is out there. And once the smoke starts going, and with each loss, it's going to keep building and building into a fire. And in our 9 years here, we've been through a lot with this when it comes to the coaches and GMs and everything else in between. Like, hopefully they can get it together because it's looking like it's going towards another end of a Brown season where we're going to be doing coaching searches, GM searches, quarterback searches, and everything else in between again, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to put this out there. You have to win one of the next two games, either against Pittsburgh or the Dolphins before the bye week. You have to. There's no, if they lose these next two games, you're heading into the bye week. Who knows what happens? This
Right.
coaching staff has to, and these players have to win one of these next two games against Pittsburgh or the Dolphins. So it's a tough situation to be in. You don't going to Pittsburgh and winning is not an easy thing. Last time was in the playoffs. There's no crowd there, which makes a huge difference. But it's a very tough place to win, and you have the Dolphins game after that, and they're struggling. Like the Dolphins are 1-4 this season. They're struggling just as bad as the Browns, and if you lose to them before the bye week, you could probably make an excuse for Pittsburgh if it's a close game. You know, kind of it being okay. But if you lose to Miami before the bye week as well, it's not going to be pretty, and it's not something that we want to deal with because we're tired of dealing with it over these 9 years, as you talked about of doing the show. But I I I don't want that to be the case. So you have to win one of these next few games.
Yeah, it's bad. It's come to that. Like we knew the Browns were going to be bad, but we also didn't realize like the rookie class was going to jump out and be as good as as they've been. We didn't expect we expected the defense to be good. We didn't expect it to be back towards like being one of the best in the league. I thought, top 10, top half of the league, obviously, but they've been one of the top 5 defenses in the league, or some would argue the best. Like Quinshawn Judkins coming back from all the stuff that, all the self-inflicted stuff that he did, to be one of the best running backs in the league already, 4 games into his career. Like it's we expect better. To quote the coach, to says that we have to be better. We should be better than what 1-4 is. Like we should have at least 2 wins. We could argue we should be 3-2. Like, and unfortunately, people lose their jobs for an ineptitude like this. And you know, I will say it. I like Kevin Stefanski. I think if he does ends up being his last year in Cleveland, like I think he will get another job somewhere, and I think he has the makings of being a good head coach. But this is year 6. He's not getting the job done right now, and unfortunately, like if you don't get the job done, they'll find someone else to do it. Do I trust the people running the organization to find that guy? No, but at the end of the day, like you don't do your job and you're not doing it successfully, like changes are going to come. So like you said, if they don't win in the next 2 weeks, like it wouldn't put it past me if they make a change at midseason. I don't think it'll do them any good, because what good will it do, honestly? Because outside of losing the locker room, but nothing we've not seen here before in the last 26 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to fix the offensive line issue,
Nope.
to where you're able to run the football and protect your quarterback. It's not going to fix
It's
that.
not going to fix, yeah, it's not going to fix the wide receivers dropping balls.
Nope.
Like,
It's
although somehow that position coach has somehow survived all 6 years of Stefanski, but they made all the other offensive staff changes that one year.
yeah, I don't know.
Still weird to me.
Yeah, and like we've appreciated the consistency of ownership to stick through these years. Like
Absolutely.
they certainly have had the reputation of the quick hook in terms of coaches and general managers and everything. So to have this consistency for as long as we have has been nice. But at some point, push comes to shove where, all right, these guys can't get the job done. We have to go in a different direction. Like they've been able to find out what the front office is able to do, what the coaching staff is able to do, what they can't do. And if it's gotten to a point where, okay, we've given this as fair of a try as we can, but it's not going to move forward any more than what it is or what it has been with the 2 playoff appearances. Like if it's not going to move any more forward than that, then you have to make a change to where you want to get to the ultimate goal.
Without a doubt.
So, you know, that's their decision to make of whether this is the correct regime to do that in. But we'll see how that all shakes out here, and these next couple weeks could expedite that thinking process a little bit more, to be able to figure that out. So,
Without a doubt.
all right, we are going to get out of here. Be sure to give Jack a follow on X at Jack McCurry08. Give me a follow at Anthony Joki Joki. Be sure to follow the Dawgland at the Dawgland on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff with the same handle. Definitely appreciate it. Hit like and subscribe on the YouTube channel here where you're watching the show. If you're watching on YouTube, we greatly appreciate it. Please drop us a comment as well. Till next time, always remember, go Browns.
Go Browns.